Welcome to the 5-7 podcast. I'm your host Pri, and today we're going to talk about the tragedy in Sri Lanka and how it applies to us. If you haven't already, be sure to rate, review, and hit the subscribe button. Here we go. I cite my sources as NPR, I went to CNN.com, and I went to The Guardian. More than 207 people were killed and 450 wounded after explosions tore through Sri Lanka in a series of coordinated blasts and struck churches and hotels. It marked the country's worst violence since the end of the Civil War in 2009. The blast started as people gathered for Mass on Easter Sunday. Bombings were at St. Sebastian's Church in Negombo, Zion Church in Batticaloa, in the capital of Colombo, St. Anthony's Shrine, Kingsbury Hotel, Shangri-La Hotel, Cinnamon Grand Hotel, a guest house near Dahiwala Zoo, and a block of flats where police were doing raids. 3 police were also killed doing those raids. Now, being in a situation like this can be horrific. There are things that can be learned from this. First, we need to talk about the scope of this and how absolutely horrible of a situation this is. Now, people go to church on Sundays every week, and we go to church, and we're like, okay, we're going to go to lunch afterwards, and we kind of take it for granted, that we live in such a safe country as the United States. And one day we could get a rude awakening where something horrific happens, and you want to be prepared for those situations. Now, I'm not trying to be a fearmonger, and that's not what I'm trying to get at here. What I am trying to get at is that we can all be a little bit more prepared and be more aware of the situations that we're going in, even if they are the more, mundane or typical situations, that we find ourselves in. First thing you can do that I always like to push is work on your physical fitness. Now, when you work on your physical fitness, you put yourself in a better situation so that if you are in a situation like this, that you'll be fit enough to, if you need to, carry a loved one or need to move objects out of the way to get to a loved one, or maybe you're just trying to help somebody else. You'll be physically fit to do that. Another thing to take into consideration is you want to know first aid, CPR, and some stop the bleed training. Now, the reason for all of these are for first aid is you want to be able to tend to people with the most basic of needs. Okay. You want to know CPR because if you need to give chest compressions to somebody, you need to know how to do that successfully, because somebody could have gone into, cardiac arrest, during such an attack, and they may need somebody to give mouth to mouth or chest compressions until the first responders arrive and stop the bleed. There are tons of people who die in car accidents every day, and in being in a situation like this, there are chances that people could receive shrapnel or, just random parts from a bomb that can sever an arterial artery, and you may need to put a tourniquet on somebody. And knowing on how to do that for a loved one is incredibly important, and it could save somebody's life. So these are some things to take into consideration to learn, and so that when you walk through your daily life, you are prepared for if something like this happens. And finally is training. Now, there are lots of places that you can get training like this. And one thing that you need to do is introduce stress into your training, because when you introduce stress into your training, it will prepare you for when you go into a situation like this. Because when something like this happens, your heart rate's going to start going, and you're going to be confused, and you're not going to know what to do. What you need to do is take a second to take in the situation and then proceed from there. Because once you are able to do that, you'll be more calm. You'll settle yourself down a little bit, and then you'll be able to go and provide some assistance to somebody. And our friends over at Fieldcraft Survival, they provide a lot of this training. So look them up on the internet, fieldcraftsurvival.com. They have classes that they hold around the country. So check out their scheduling and see if maybe you can get into a class. Moving on. The blast gave way to sounds of screams and cries as billowing smoke could be seen from the streets. Inside the churches, devastated worshippers stood near pews covered in rubble and blood. A similar scene of destruction was reported at the luxury hotels that were attacked. No one has claimed responsibility for the attacks, but police say 13 suspects linked to the explosions have been arrested. The Associated Press reported Sri Lanka's Defense Minister Ruwan Wijewardene described the violence as a terrorist attack carried out by religious extremists and said he believed they were part of one group. Information about the bombings appeared to have been received in advance. We must look into why adequate precautions were not taken. Neither I nor the ministers were kept informed. Now, that's a problem because that's a communication issue between in this government entity. It's a leadership problem that this information didn't get pushed up the chain of command. It was a river of blood. A shoekeeper named N.A. Sumanapala near St. Anthony's Shrine told the New York Times. Ash was falling like snow, he said. I saw limbs and heads. There were children, too. After the explosions, the government announced a curfew, which took immediate effect. Easter services scheduled for Sunday evening were canceled. Sri Lanka's state news agency reported that the government moved to block social media sites, including Facebook and Instagram, to stop the spread of false information. The Sri Lanka Red Cross said misinformation had already begun to spread online about its building being attacked, and it sought to dispel the rumor. Security forces were deployed to religious sites, and Sri Lanka's president, Maithripala Sirisensa, told defense officials to set up a national operations center for investigations. We will go after them, Defense Minister Wijewardene vowed. Whatever religious extremism that they are following, we will take the necessary actions against them, and we will stop these groups from operating in this country in the near future. The defense minister also said that 3 police officers lost their lives during a search for suspects after explosives detonated. The foreign minister said that at least 27 foreigners were killed: a Portuguese national, a Dutch national, 2 Turkish engineers, at least 3 British citizens. Several Chinese citizens were reported among the dead as well. Several American citizens were also among the victims, a spokesperson for the U.S. State Department told NPR. U.S. officials are advising Americans in Sri Lanka to remain sheltered in place and to follow news reports. The spokesperson said the U.S. Embassy in Colombo gave Americans who might need help a phone number to call to reach embassy staff. During his Easter Sunday Mass at the Vatican, Pope Francis took time to offer condolences to victims of what he called such a cruel act of violence. President Trump tweeted a message of support for Sri Lanka on Sunday, saying, "The United States offers heartfelt condolences to the great people of Sri Lanka. We stand ready to help." Muslims in Sri Lanka have also condemned the violence. Al Salian Jaminiyatul Ulama, a Sri Lankan-based group of Islamic clerics, denounced the attacks on Christian places of worship. Sri Lanka, a small island nation in the Indian Ocean, is primarily Buddhist. Less than 10% of the country identifies as Catholic, according to Sri Lanka's Department of Census and Statistics. Religious and ethnic tensions have plagued the tropical country for years. A civil war started in 1983 and ended in 2009. After security forces defeated the Tamil Tigers, rebels who were fighting for an independent homeland. Sri Lanka's minority Christian community appeared to be the main target of Sunday's attack. Christianity is a minority religion in Sri Lanka, accounting for less than 10% of the total population of 21.4 million. According to the census data, 70.2% of Sri Lankans identify as Buddhist, 12% Hindu, 9.7% Muslim, and 7.4% Christian. It is estimated that 82% of Sri Lankans Christians are Roman Catholic. Now, this sounds like, like a recipe for another war. I shouldn't say another war. I should say maybe, just that it's just going to keep on going, that it's never ending. Another fight against terrorism, another cause to get behind, another location that we're going to get involved in. Now, who knows? Maybe this is something that we don't get involved in, but it sounds like, that they could be asking for help. And what happens after a country asks for help? The Americans get involved. That's not necessarily a bad thing, because I think that there is somewhat of a moral, I wouldn't say dilemma, but you're in a moral position. If you can help somebody, you want to help them. Now, is this going to extend, where are these people from? Who's going to take responsibility for this? Is this a new, terrorist organization or what have you? Who knows? But, I just wish that there is, some way that, that we don't have to send more guys out there. Hopefully it doesn't come to that. And I don't want it to come to that. But we need to think about what's going on in these other countries. We need to take their issues seriously, because we can learn lessons from what is happening in other places and try to implement them here. How did these guys, get these explosives? How did they do this? What's the communication? As citizens, what can we do? What can we look out for? What are we trying to do to help the cause? Because, in America, there seems to be a big, somewhat of an anti-police, anti-establishment thing going on. And there needs to be a realization among the citizens and among the government that we're all in this together, that we're all trying to lead good lives and lead the good fight against evil tyranny and just against evil. There's a lot of people out there, they go to work and they want to come home and watch the ball game on TV, and that's the somewhat the American dream. And we're all entitled to that. But it only takes another 9/11 to make a blip on the radar, a little blip on the Richter scale, to change things where maybe people start taking things a little bit more seriously. After 9/11, everybody was going to the gas stations, grabbing gas, wanting to know what the heck was going on. There's a huge sense of patriotism. And then over time, it seemed to have faded away. And I don't know why. I don't know why the people can't take, pride in their flag and understand that the flag is a symbol, and it's a symbol of freedom. It's a symbol of freedom around the world. Maybe some people don't like it, what have you. That's, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. But it's important to know that we're free here, and we need to defend our freedom, and we need to accept that there's certain realities that could change the way that we do things, And 9/11 was one of them. It was one of them for my generation, as far as I knew. Everybody, graduated high school, went to college, you got a degree, and then you got a job, got married, had kids, and that's pretty much it, and then 9/11 happened, and then a lot of guys signed up for military service. I was one of them. And it changed my life. And we don't want another one of those situations to happen. And in order to prevent that, we need to be more aware as citizens. We need to help, police officers. We need to help firefighters, first responders, and look around and see if we see things that are suspicious, things that stand out. Don't just keep your head in your phone when you're walking around. Take a look around. Is there some guy, sitting in a car, across the street from a building, sweating, just sitting there, looking nervous? You might want to report something like that. If you're walking down the street, do you see somebody walking behind you? You make a right, they're still there. You make a left and then another left, and they're still behind you. That's a little bit of cause for concern, I would say. If you take your head out of your phone, you'll notice these things. You start paying attention to things, especially if you have kids. Now, people are kidnapping kids and doing all kinds of horrible things to them, and we definitely don't want that happening. So if you have kids, keep an eye on them when you're at the park. Watch them. Look who they're playing with. Look who they're talking to. Look, where they're running around at, and keep a lookout. I hope everybody takes the advice seriously. Remember, this is just a call for awareness. I'm not trying to call the dogs and ring the bells or anything, but this is a serious thing that happened in Sri Lanka, and we want to keep our eyes open and our ears out, paying attention, because we don't want it happening here. Well, that's all that I got for you today, guys, and thank you for listening. It's very appreciative. I hope hope this gives you some awareness for your Monday, what's going on in the world right now, and take care of yourselves, everybody. And I'll see you Thursday. This is Pre out.